Good morning and afternoon. It's Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Welcome all. I'm Kane and I'm joined with David, better known as the Workday Sharing Guy. Also joining us today is Denise, the Sharing Show organizer. Welcome to the Sharing Show.
Kane, can you tell me a little bit more about Zoom?
Certainly. So we're using Zoom today, and down below you should see a chat button. If you would like to chat to anybody on the show today, any of the guests or David, etc., please use the chat button. We want to keep this interactive, and the show is being recorded, will be published out so you can catch up at a later time. And now I think I'm ready to pass over to you, Denise, for our first Kahoot.
Good morning, everyone. It's time for our Kahoot. If you will open a browser and log into Kahoot.it, you'll be able to join us for a couple questions here this morning. There's no right or wrong answers on these, just whatever best suits your situation.
And all you need to do is open up your browser to the URL kahoot.it. You do not need to log in, but you will be asked for a PIN.
Denise, it's asking me for a PIN.
We'll get our PIN in just a moment here. Okay, the PIN for our survey this morning is 923411. After you enter that, it's going to ask you for a screen name. So just put in something that lets us know who you are. I'll just wait a minute for a few more people to get in, and then we'll get started. All right, here comes our first question. Counting this one, how many airings of the Sharing Show have you attended? Red is 0, blue is 1, yellow is 2, and green is all 3. Isn't that kind of funny? 0, well, you're here today, so I think you've attended at least 1. So we kind of caught you with David's little joke this morning. So it looks like a lot of you have been here for quite a few. So let's move on to the next question. Give it a minute to enter and ask in the chat during these 30 minutes. What would you ask? A question related to reporting or data is red. Blue is a question related to Prism, learning, or another new feature. Yellow is a question related to Workday 32 update, and green is a very good question, but not related to any of the above. So we have a lot of people who would like to ask questions about reporting or data. So we'll get to those questions later, hopefully.
Denise, who's up next?
Up next is David, the Workday Sharing Guy.
Okay, hi everybody. This is David, the Workday Sharing Guy. I start my part of this, the sharing show, with a disclaimer agreement I have with Workday to make sure everybody knows that I'm not representing Workday. I am not an active Workday employee. Those of us who are in Workday know that I'm in what Workday calls WOW, Workday on Workday. I'm employee number 149. I have a hire date in 2007. But I'm not active. I left Workday about 6 years ago. So nothing that I say is representing Workday. Same with everyone. We're all customers. We're all just representing ourselves and customers in general. This is not training. What we're doing here with the Sharing Show and Share-a-thons, this is just knowledge sharing. So I would like to say I highly recommend Workday training. And now this week, I've actually added here a little bit more, because in this past week, we now have a new feature on the Sharing Show, which is the fortune cookie of the week. For those who aren't able to read that, if you think you're too small to be effective, you have never been in bed with a mosquito. Now, I probably have had 1,000 fortune cookies in my life. I've never seen something this funny or different. So I decided to keep it, and I realized it's actually appropriate here, because we're all individually just one person. I mean, in the whole Workday ecosystem, each of us is small in a way, but Workday is a huge system. So what helps all of us is by joining together as a team. And so this happened a couple years ago. A post I put up on community. Somebody from Workday, Doug, actually said that he wanted to say, as an employee, he uses the word awesome about how we're helping the Workday community learn to fish. There's just so many great bits of functionality and information inside of Workday that go unused or unknown. Some people newer to Workday don't realize that there's a lot of Workday customers. Most of us are not using the whole system or as much as we could be. So our group is helping to shine the light on what's possible. And this is important here, is that you are now actually part of this group. You're attending the sharing show. So when he's referring to the group, he's referring to all of us who are part of this sharing movement. Now, it's important also to be somewhat active on LinkedIn. I saw this note from somebody who was our guest last week, Tina. On LinkedIn, she saw a nice post from Workday, and all she wrote there was, "I love Workday." And the reason that's significant is because when I saw that, it gave me an idea to have a virtual um, happy happy Valentine's Day card for Workday, and people submitted photos that I delivered to Workday. And I had completely forgotten that actually Valentine's Day was a special birthday for somebody at Workday. So what I wanted to point out there is not just community, but on LinkedIn is how we are connecting here, the sharing show. We have a LinkedIn group for the sharing show. This is it for my disclaimer, plus a little bit more from me this week.
Denise, what's next on the agenda?
Up next, we're going to look at last week's Ask.
So this is a picture of the Ask from last week that's on community. And you could see here that there's been an answer to that. We may or may not discuss it. What we want to do is just make sure people know that you have an opportunity to be a guest and ask a question. You could come in as a special guest and verbally describe your question, or you'll have an opportunity just to put it into the chat. So this brings us to our next item.
Our special guest is next, our anonymous special guest, with her question about pay change history.
Okay, so my question is in regards to the pay change history tab when you're in the worker profile. So when you select the compensation section for the pay change history, the data in the area is not visible to the direct manager for all of their workers. This particular manager has 3 workers. So the pay change history, when I was proxied in as the manager's manager in Sandbox, it is visible for one of the 3 employees. So I had opened a ticket with our partner, and they actually suggested another view to see the data. And the view that they suggested was to go, when you're looking at the person's record and you go to compensation, then view compensation history, all past and present positions. So when looking at that view, it's not as clean as when you're in the pay change history, because the pay change history is more data than anything. It's just the date, the change that was made, and the differences between the salary changes. So I wanted to know, is there any way, does anybody know of any way to get pay change history info to actually show for direct managers?
Okay, so it's an opportunity for people to put something into the chat or have a discussion about that in the chat.
Denise, while some sharing fans discuss this on the chat, let's also open up the chat to anybody who has an ask.
Ask away. The chat is open for ask. So if there's anything that you have that you would like to ask the group or any of our guests, please feel free to put it in the chat.
And what we'll do here is we'll just pause here a second for people to realize that you could be asking questions live. We will take that chat and then we could post that again on the LinkedIn group for the sharing show and have a discussion there. You can also put into the chat right now and ask, and go ahead with your ask and let us know if you would like some airtime next week, which would mean you did just like our previous guest. You send us a screenshot, some words to help people have a better understanding than just reading your question. What I'd like to do quickly is just take a look at last week's challenge question, because it ties into the challenge of this week. Okay, so the challenge of the week is somewhat related to this. This is a picture from last week. Essentially, it's how would you sort by hire date when the end user of your report doesn't want to actually see the day of the month. The end user just wants to see here month and year. So alphabetically, it won't sort anymore. A lot of people had this answer correct last week. For those who don't know, this was actually posted about 2 years ago on Community. So that's one hint as to get more information as to this question from last week. The other hint is that there's a lot of features on the sort tab. And you'll see in this picture, I'm going to blow up that little part that shows that there's a feature inside of report writing when you get to the filter in the sort tab, where you can only look at the fields that are on the report. That way you know that you have the actual fields that you want, but you don't have to sort and filter on fields that are on the report. It's just a feature to help you find, if it is on the report, the exact field instead of accidentally clicking the wrong one. That brings us to challenge of the week. Here's a picture of a report definition. This is a real live report that I've seen with a client, and you'll see several fields, and I am highlighting 2 of the fields. There's the email primary work, both on the worker and on the worker's manager. So here comes a question. The question is, why can't I sort or filter on the worker's email primary work field? Now when I say why can't I sort on it, you'll see here I've highlighted once again under the sort tab the option to use fields on report. So the fields on the report do not show this. They don't show the email primary work on the worker. So why is that? These first 5 all appear just fine. The employee ID all the way down through preferred name, last name. Those all appear. But the email primary work on the worker doesn't appear here as a field on the report. As a hint, the email primary work on the manager level 1 also doesn't appear. And as a hint number 2, also the email primary home on the worker object does not show either. So this is now bringing us to a reminder from last week's airing of the sharing show.
So last week's fun photo of the week, we had Chestmere. And stay tuned for our surprise European guest maybe next week. If you would like to have your pic displayed, you can submit your favorite pic to be considered for a fun photo of the week. And you will submit that via our LinkedIn group, The Sharing Show. You don't have to be from Europe to enter.
David, what's the update on the first week's brainstorm?
This is a picture of the brainstorm that came up during the first airing of the sharing show. And you'll see the note there, 2396.99. And there were 37 votes for this brainstorm. And it bumped up to 40. We had 3 votes actually on that same day. We maybe made a mistake last week by not highlighting this brainstorm. Maybe it's a good idea for us to highlight all the brainstorms that we're showing. So we do have a new brainstorm for this week as well. And we have kind of a special surprise because the author of this brainstorm, as well as the new one, will be joining us here very shortly.
This brings us to our next special guest, Floyd from Tennessee.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Steve.
Floyd.
I thought we'd follow up with a quick thing on the one session we had 2 weeks ago where we talked a little bit about searching by Workday ID, but we talked a little bit about the term mouse gymnastics. And so related actions are extremely powerful, but they're also one of the things that take the most administrative overhead in people that are in Workday a lot. And so you can end up, particularly if you're an administrator, you can end up spending a lot of time chasing rabbit trails with related actions on particular instances. So this was an example out of a GMS tenant about an issue with some data sources that prompt for a payroll period on payroll input, which basically list every payroll period that you've ever had in your tenant since you went live, with no quick way to get to that. And while we could search by Workday ID like we talked about 2 weeks ago, there is a different way. So one way that works nicely without having to get into Workday ID is to use the favorites capability that's in Workday, so that you can create favorite business objects. So if you were to go in and bring up, in this case, a period and put that into your favorites as a favorite business object, then when you prompt for a period, there's a search category at the top called My Favorites that lists those things that are in your favorites without having to navigate through everything else. So that works nicely in that use case, but even for report writers, I found that works nicely for numeric formatting. So if you have one or two formats that you use most often, you can actually go in and favorite a particular format, and then it shows up under My Favorites in your numeric formatting and saves you some wear and tear on your mouse hand. And one place that does not exist, which we've had an interest in ever since we pretty much went live with Workday, is a way to do that for related actions themselves, so that you would have a way to basically create your favorite related actions and have them appear right at the top of the related actions menu for a given instance of a certain class. That's in Brainstorm, and there's a link to that there on the show. I know Workday's talked about having AI that watches things and putting your most recent stuff at the top. My personal preference would be not to wait for that level of complexity, but to give customers a way to put their few items that they use most recently at the top and put them in the driver's seat.
Okay, Floyd, I am looking to see here, because this should be your brainstorm.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, because people can't click on that link, but again, that's all the links from the show will be on the LinkedIn group, the sharing show. Floyd, did you want to say any other words about, because we will bring up the previous brainstorm in this one, and we will look to see if we could get triple digits on these.
Yeah, I'm interested not only in the general concept that we posted there, but anything anybody else can think about that would make it more administratively efficient for them to work in Workday and work with related action.
Okay, thank you, Floyd. So again, we will have links to these brainstorms on the sharing show LinkedIn group.
And Denise, where will I find the link to this, to vote for this fantastic brainstorm?
Like David said, the latest news, pictures, and chat highlights and the networking is all on our LinkedIn group. If you click on the sharing show group and request to join, then you'll be able to see all of that great stuff that we add there.
And there's a little animal reminder here for people not to get distracted. It's right there, request to join.
Denise, David, and guests, it's time for a chat check-in. Looks like we've had quite a few asks. Do we have any low-hanging asks we can get right to?
I see something like 15 messages. Is there anything that's low-hanging ask?
There's an ask from, it looks like maybe Beth, that says it's for our special guest, and it's about security. Do you see that one, David?
Can you read it out loud?
Says, do managers have access to the worker data, compensation by organization domain, and for the workers where the managers can't see pay history, have they been transferred to the manager after the pay changes that they may have used?
Okay, that one I had memorized like last week, but now I've brought in so much more information, I've lost it. So for those who don't know my sense of humor, I actually haven't memorized that one. Floyd, have you memorized that one?
You're talking about that pay change history on the worker profile. That would almost be one you'd have to go do a little digging to see if they can post it in the Q&A forum. And then if anybody can find, some options for that, that'd probably be a good place to collaborate on that one. But that would be hard to tell off. Any security thing is a little difficult to do off the top of your head without digging a little bit.
Right. Okay. We'll encourage people to go ahead and put your questions in the chat, but it probably won't be low-hanging asks if they're security related.
Up next is the boomerang return.
What I'd like to do here is talk about the first airing of the sharing show. Mike gave a brief presentation of a couple of boomerangs. The reason I'm bringing it up is before the next sharing show, which is every Wednesday, where we have a boomerang share-a-thon on Tuesday of next week, March 19th.
David, what is a boomerang integration?
All right, I'm going to borrow some of Mike's slides. He showed two different boomerangs. The first one, I didn't even think myself of this as a boomerang. It's pulling data out of Workday, creating BERT, printable PDFs for managers, and then puts that back into Workday for those managers to see on their drive. The second one is more of what I think of as a boomerang, which is take out of Workday, for those who have Workday recruiting, candidates' names when they're sometimes their input or they're from a resume as all capitalized letters. Take those out of Workday, make them mixed case, what some people call camel case, and then put it back into Workday. So essentially, so that it's mixed. Now, all boomerang integrations, if they're on the simple side, will follow a pattern where they take data out of Workday and then they do something with that data, and then they put that data back into Workday, slightly massaged, somewhat new data. In the case of the first one, the new data is actually just BERT that goes back in. In the case of this second one of candidate names, it actually changes the case of people's names. The names stay the same, but from all capital to mixed. So you see on the right here, I want to focus just on that special part of doing something. You'll see on the right, McFry and McDonald's, that gets changed to be mixed case. And the magic that Mike shared with us is this regex, which is where I want to highlight how we're all in this together. We don't need Mike to fix this necessarily, but we don't need 100 customers or 20 or whoever want to do this. We don't need everyone working on this on their own. What we're going to do is we're going to work with Mike on this, and we'll fix it, and all customers could use the exact same code. That's part of the idea here of the sharing movement. So I'm going to do a quick reminder here of the Kahoot from last week. This was a picture in which inside this cereal, there were hidden 8 Logan McNeils. That's just a preview here because we're about to wrap up the sharing show with this week's quiz. So, what will it be? It's another picture. Some of you might recognize this picture. So take a close look, and we're getting ready to have our next Kahoot, which won't be a survey, it will actually be a quiz. Now, I'm going to give a little hint here, is that there is cereal there, but that cereal does not have any Logans in it.
All right, we're ready for our last Kahoot here. It's our quiz. If you'll go back to your browser and go back into kahoot.it, we'll get a pin here in a moment, and there will be right and wrong answers to these questions. There are 2 questions. So our pin for this is 505862. We'll wait here for a minute for some people to get in, and we'll get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, our first question is, why does sort and filter not work for email primary work fields? Red is the worker, ROB was accidentally used as the BO. Blue is sort and filter do not work on email fields. Yellow is Logan does not have a primary work email, and green is manager, level 1 field needs to appear on the bottom. Yay! 14 people got that one right. Let's see. Nathan's in the lead. Let's go to the last question. How many Logans were there in the picture? Red is 5, blue is 7, yellow is 11, and green is 13.
This picture does not have the Logans in it, unfortunately.
Seven. That is the correct answer. 25 people were able to count the Logans. You guys have better eyes than I do. And Nathan is our champion this week with Miss B in second and Samantha in third. Thank you guys for playing along.
All right, this one does show the picture with the Logans. I think people were able just to guess from those prime numbers, but let's just take a look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to go back just so it helps people see where those Logans were hidden. We're ready for the wrap up.
Great show again, everybody. Now, just a reminder, we have pushed last week's episode to the Sharing Show YouTube channel, along with the first episode, and this being episode number 3 will also be up there shortly. So please head over to YouTube, find the channel, subscribe, set the notifications on so you're alerted when new content is posted. So just this last moment to say thank you all for joining, and don't forget, if you want to be on the Sharing Show, please contact us via the LinkedIn group, and enjoy the rest of your week and have a great work day.